I think the other thing that maybe applies to almost everybody is that when you get sick, and when you get sick with these kinds of diseases, long COVID, Lyme, chronic fatigue, and your body is just sending these multiple signals all the time. I felt like I had little lights going off all the time, like, pay attention, headache, pay attention, burning feet, pay attention, you're not sleeping, pay attention. But then when it's a mystery and you don't know how to fix it, your brain starts looping and your brain starts making these lists of what's wrong, right? And it's almost like your mind is afraid of letting go of what's wrong because if you take your consciousness off of it, then you're not going to get better.
Hey, beautiful soul, and welcome to Dear Body, I'm Listening, the podcast for women living with chronic illness, invisible symptoms, and the quiet grief of feeling dismissed in your own body. I'm Donna Piper, and here we tell the truth about healing, the messy parts, the hopeful parts, and the parts no one prepared us for. This is a space for real talk, nervous system safe support, and learning to trust your body again, one breath at a time. Welcome back to Dear Body, I'm Listening. My name is Donna, and today I'm delighted to be talking with Diana Gordon. She's a poet, a novelist, she's a writer, she's done many things, she's an athlete, and she's here to tell her story today about some of her medical conditions and her immense creativity. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Diana to my show. Hi, Diana.
Hi, Donna. Hi, everybody who listens to Donna.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I think it's really important that we talk about all the things about our life. Just life happens, right? There's good, bad, and whatever. But I think a very important thing is creativity and where it comes from. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, a lot of times when we go through stuff, that's when like some of our really deep creativity comes out of it. So there's always that beauty in the crack. But I'd like to start today just to have you introduce yourself, let the audience know anything you would like to know about yourself, like maybe where you are right now. You have all this beautiful books behind you and you look really cozy and comfy.
I'm sitting in semi-rural Western Massachusetts. It's very lush. It's a stormy day. It's wet and rainy and green beyond belief. I love days like this. It's gorgeous. And there's a long field outside my window, and there's a doe with a fawn right below the window, and also a wild turkey with one turkey chick. They're both out there at the same time. And so it's also, unfortunately, that intersection where people are getting sick because of tick-borne diseases and like that. So there's a mixed feeling, but it's very beautiful here. Yes.
Aw, sounds quite
And
lovely.
yeah.
So let's kind of start with a little bit about your diagnosis with the Lyme disease. So for our audience that are listening or watching, you were diagnosed with Lyme disease. Like, I know it was a longer journey, but when were you diagnosed and treated? How long has that been?
Probably it took 5 years to diagnose this. I know that a lot of my story isn't uncommon. I walked into a doctor in this area, outdoors woman, with dogs, with horses, and the ticks in this area were never here. I've lived in this house for 40 years, and all of a sudden sort of appeared, and then there was none here for 15 years, and then they were on my dogs and me. I mean, it was just we'd walk in every day with 10 or 15 or 20 ticks between us. And I went in with that and unseasonable flus and many tick bites, and my doctor didn't believe it was Lyme disease, even though I was getting sick every 3 weeks. So that was early on, and doctors were really trying to pretend like this wasn't happening. It was a new disease. They didn't know what was going on. They had a lot of people coming in this area with all sorts of different symptoms, and there are so many with Lyme disease, and so many. The list of symptoms is so deep, and the co-infections are deep, and it's very confusing. So I just got sicker and sicker and sicker, so that by the time I was diagnosed, I had 80% of the symptoms on the Columbia Medical School page. I was really very sick.
And
And
during this time,
go ahead.
were you doing your own research with this to try to help, or did you just kind of go in and you were not sure what was going on, or did you know kind of like, oh, it could be Lyme disease or it could be something else?
I
Like
really didn't have a clue initially. And there came a day where 3 different people, the guy who cuts the hay in my field, a friend, and somebody else I don't remember, all in one day said, "Oh, you have Lyme disease." And it was like, "What?" And then I did what almost all of us do. We all sort of invent the wheel on our own, right? We all get onto the internet. We all look at all of the things that we can do to be healthier, to be better, to try to untangle the mysteries. And while we're talking about this, I'm also conscious that long COVID's in this journey too. That long COVID has been so similar. It's been a sibling experience for a lot of people. Yeah, so that happened, and I went to many, many, many doctors because there were many, many, many symptoms, and, then I got into more holistic type of doctors who were treating the whole of me and willing to entertain Lyme disease initially. But it wasn't until I got to Doctor Richard Horowitz that I finally started to get better, and that wasn't until 2014. It's just, you read articles in the New York Times. I think Ross Douthat had Lyme disease, and there was another huge profile journalist who had it, and they all make this comment about, and then I saw this doctor and I started to get better. It's almost always Dr. Horowitz that they're seeing, so, yeah. And then
Wow.
that was its own ordeal. It really took about 3 years, and there was a year and a half when I was on 81 pills a day, taken 17 different times a day, just everything. He didn't leave any stone unturned. So, but I think this is a pretty common journey for people who are struggling with mystery illnesses.
Yeah, like, I was diagnosed with, I can never say that it's ME/chronic fatigue syndrome, and the doctor that I went to him for something else with my lymphatics, and I had no idea that this was a specialty, and he also has wrote a couple books on long COVID, but he's been doing this for 30 years. He's an osteopath out of the UK, and there's this system, like how he describes everything with your hypothalamus and your central nervous system. They're not connecting, and underlying conditions come up during long COVID and all of these things, how it's related. So it sounds like anything that has systemic issues and then is in our system for a very long time, like long COVID has a lot of the same symptoms or similar, there's a lot of similar brain fog, cognitive issues, fatigue, everything, but it's also preempted by a virus. So your brain still thinks that it's sick and it's trying to do all these down regulations to help you get better.
Mhm.
So in that one, Lyme disease, I hear so many people that, you know, it's relatively new that they've been talking about it again, but for some reason, I guess they thought that Lyme disease didn't exist anymore. I'm not really sure why that, was like, oh, that was like something long time ago. Because, it was very prevalent at some point. But do they know why you have so many ticks in your area? I mean, that's just kind of a random question, but to live there for so long and not have ticks and then have so many ticks, do they have any idea, like,
I
why?
can only say what I think, which is
Okay.
the winters are so much milder than they were. When, I mentioned we were talking before the show, so I can't
Mhm.
remember if we said that I was an equestrian and a horsewoman, but when I first moved here, it was typical in February to have 2 weeks where the daytime temperatures never got above 5 degrees, and that is serious cold. That is like, the buckets in the barn would freeze to these solid masses in a matter of hours, and yeah, and so that happened every winter. I mean, I remember that my mother-in-law visiting from Southern California was with us at Christmas, and we were looking at a temperature gauge outside the house that said 28 below, so really, really, really cold. It is not like that anymore. When we first moved here, we've been here for decades. The first 2 or 3 decades that we were here, everybody had snow tires, everybody had chains for their tires. Nobody has even snow tires anymore here because we don't need them that often. And those days of the temperature never rising above 5 degrees, they don't happen at all. And there are other birds that are overwintering here, like cardinals that were mid-Atlantic state birds, but they're here all winter now. So I think the ticks have just moved north. They were in the Mid-Atlantic region, and then they moved
Mhm.
north, and then who knows what happens with the bacteria they picked up because it's not the little ticks, actually, it's the bacteria in the ticks that's giving us all the trouble, so, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
I
climate
mean,
change.
yeah, and not having that time where they would definitely die off, and if like anything, an environment, if it's like disease or whatever, they like, once the virus, whatever, is in you, it creates a home and doesn't wanna leave, so just like the external environment, if the weather's nice and it's rainy and they have food and they can thrive on things, then the environment will thrive externally as well.
They deserve to be here too, they really
Mhm.
do. Even living here, like, we live in the Connecticut River Valley, so we're down low, and we're at the foothill of the Berkshires. So, for the first 5, 6, 7 years that the ticks showed up, and they were for some reason, they were at my house a lot. My friends who live up in the hill towns didn't see any. And then you could just watch them kinda migrate up to the higher elevations and then migrate up to the farthest northern part of Massachusetts and start showing up in Vermont. So you can pretty much watch this happening in real time year to year.
And now, are you a part of any other groups with Lyme disease or anything to kinda just spread awareness, like, with your community, since with neighbors or people, like, as you see it going, is there kind of a, like, grassroots sort of, I don't know what to call it, but to let people to know, like, "Oh, if you could get sick or get some of these symptoms, have your doctor test for Lyme disease." Is that something that
There's a lot of
happens?
associations and groups around here. I don't belong
Okay.
to them. I jump on board pretty quickly if anybody calls me. Occasionally, like once every month or 2, I'll get somebody who's new to it and wants to know stuff, and I'll let them know as much as I can and steer them. But I'm sort of a individual person in that way. So, we're being candid, and I did when I was at my sickest, I did go to a library support group briefly, and I've never met so many depressed people in my life. People were just they were in it, they couldn't get out of it. They'd had it for 5 or 6 or 7 years. Their doctor said, "Yeah, no more antibiotics for you, it's not working," and they felt like they were at the end of their rope. There was about 15 or 20 people there, and I walked out, I was so depressed and so feeling without hope that I didn't want to go to any more Lyme support groups. Now there's Lyme associations now that are doing great, great work, and, so I think at the point that I started to get better and go on with my life was about the same time that these groups started becoming more prevalent and doing the good work they're doing now, so I think that's the
And
other thing that happens is when you're sick with something, you talk to a lot of people who are sick with something, and then when you get better, you go on and live your life, and nobody comes back to say, "Hey, I got better," and I can say I'm like 95% better. I have a couple days a month where I have a flu-y something. It lasts for 4 or 5 hours. I'm down for the count. I get the brain fog. I get the full body ache. It's pretty clear that it's relates back to the symptoms I had, but the rest of the time I'm good. So, then you wanna grab life and go.
definitely, it gives you it's kind of an interesting perspective to be chronically ill for so long, because there are times it's like, especially when you can't figure it out, or if you're not getting better with, like, some typical things that should help people, but it also makes you appreciate your life, like, living and doing stuff, it's like this weird dichotomy of both, and I know we spoke before the show started, but do you wanna talk about with the groups that, people around were so depressed, is that inspired any of your poems that you've written, or the alone one? Or was that just like, "I know these things are great for people, but this is not where my journey is," 'cause,
Right.
groups like that are not always for everyone, Depression is real part of chronic illness, but how you know yourself. You need to know what works for you too, right? And if
It's
something that if you're like, not feeling good, and then you wanna be around sometimes that's inspiring for people to have the same symptoms, and other times it's like, "Okay, this isn't gonna make me" if I'm walking out there depressed, I know it's not for me, which is very good because then like, "Alright, that's checked off, I need to find a different way to support through this journey."
And that's okay. That's
Yeah,
okay. So
100%.
I think if I wanted to speak to that in a way that might be meaningful to people, and I'll tell you a story about a friend of mine as well. It is that when you get that sick, and when I got that sick, there was a point where I was, like, in bed 5 days a week, and for a long time, and walked with a cane for a year and a half, and I woke up 10 minutes. I never slept more than 10 minutes or at all for 4 years. All night
Mhm.
long, I'd wake up 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. It was a neurological sleep disorder, and I got a lot of advice about, life habits and stuff and no caffeine, and that was ridiculous because it wasn't that at all. It was a neurological illness. But when you get there and your brain's full of fog and your body's aching and it's just sending you so many signals and you can't function. You simply can't function. It took me half an hour to write a 3-line email. You get very lonely because people sort of give up on you. They don't know how to talk to you. And all of a sudden, you start not hearing about the fact that your friend's plumbing isn't working or that they got a new puppy or you're not going out to lunch with anybody. You're just not hearing the news. You're just
Mhm.
so apart from everybody. So I remember that. And I remember there was one friend when I said that I was lonely who started calling me every 3 days. And that was the most healing thing. So, fast forward now 6 or 7 years, and I have a friend who's very, very sick with a rare disease. It's pretty horrible. It's, erythromyalgia, and it's a rare form of it, and her feet and legs burn to the point where she can't put them down on the ground at all. She's now bedridden. She hasn't walked in 3 years, and she can't take pain meds, so the only thing she can do is there's a sort of good ending to this, but the only thing she can do to mitigate the pain is to keep her legs elevated above her hips on wedge pillows with fans aimed at them and spritzing water on them because the burning is so bad. And
Mm.
somebody who knew her said that her worst problem was she was lonely. So I know what that loneliness is. I don't know if you know what that loneliness was in,
I
like,
do.
and I can think of also a very talented dear friend who has chronic fatigue or whatever the current name of for it
Yeah.
is. And, you just, there are days and days and days she doesn't get out of her pajamas. And she's tried so hard to get well and hasn't. So I went up to visit my friend. This is about 2.5 or 3 years ago. And as a writer, I'm an accomplished writer, editor, poet, novelist. I've had a lot of short work published. I had 2 really great novels and poems, and I wasn't getting published. I was getting great letters from editors and journals, and actually my novels went to all the big houses and all the senior editors at Random House and Penguin and Catapult and all the big houses, and they loved it, and it was stillborn. And I was just I gave up. I was really sad. So I took my sad self to my friend who was truly suffering, and she said, "Well, read to me." And I said, "Do you really want that?" And she said, "Yes." So I started reading to her, and something about what we're doing here now, something about this conversation, something about having a real person sitting there by your bed when you don't feel well, just having a conversation. It is so healing, that conversation when you can't do anything else. I couldn't follow a book on tape with my eyes shut. I couldn't follow the plot. But if somebody called me and came and told me how they were doing or what was going on, I could do that. And what that did for my friend was it brought her out of herself.
So, and as you were talking to her and expressing this, And then is that when your book then got picked up and published,
Well,
or
so that was
okay.
also an amazing thing. This is like a
Uh,
totally win-win situation. So what happened for her was where pain medication was ineffective, for the couple of hours I was there every Sunday, and I started going every Sunday, she came out of herself and became involved in the story and involved in my writing, and the person that I left at the end of those 2 hours was not the person that I met at the beginning of the 2 hours. She was able to just it mitigated the pain, it truly mitigated the pain. And her disease is apparent. You can see it. Her legs are burning red and purple and ulcerated. This is not a made up disease, but just the act of conversation, brought her out of herself. So she listened to the first novel. She asked for the second novel. She asked for all the poems I ever wrote. And when I ran out of stuff and to read to her, she said, "You have to go out and get those published." And I said, "But I've been there. I had a major New York agent. The book has been stillborn twice in the big houses." And she said, "No, you have to do this." And so I had no hope that anything was going to be different. The book has gone out 120 times. It's gotten nothing but praise, and nobody published it, the first one. So just to please her, and because that was engaging to her, I put it out one more time. And consequently, and sort of confoundingly, I now have 3 books coming out. One that just came out in the last month, one in 2027, and one in 2028. It was all the material that I was reading for her. So that's part of it. The other part is that her world, she was a gardener and a naturalist and a Chinese herbalist and an
mhm.
acupuncturist, and her world has gotten confined to her bed and her view out the window with some bird feeders, and she's writing, and she has a novel. So it makes me think too about Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning,
Yeah.
that that is her purpose. And she's so much sicker than I ever was, and I was really sick, but the amount of pain that she's in is huge. The fact that when the pain lets go, she can open her notebooks and open her laptop, and she's writing flash fiction, which is a really good thing to do with those small moments. I just admire her so much. Yeah.
Wow, how inspiring, and what that personal connection definitely is needed in this chronic illness, invisible illness kind of world. And it isn't, and you just never know what's going to be the one thing that helps you through, right? Like you probably had no idea you reading your poetry and books would make such an impact in her life, right? And then also the reverse for you is true, that it finally then got published, so
Yeah,
there's some serendipity there, some magical way, right? That really,
something.
yeah, that really opened up that channel to be like, "Okay, this is something that more people need to receive, whether they're really sick or just on the spectrum of whatever, but your work in the world is needed for this to happen." Like, and maybe that's your story of, we never know why we get really sick, right?
Right. We don't.
Like, as we talked before, you're an equestrian, you're a concert pianist, correct? Those are all very physical activities that you do that really require you being upright, right? Not in a bed. So, having that kind of lifestyle where you're performing, but also active, and then being in bed, the loneliness, was it through the writing when you can get better? Because I have the same thing. Like, I can't, I'm better now in my journey, but there was times where, like, I used to be very academic and do all these things, but, like, I couldn't look at a page, I couldn't tell you what was on it, I
Yeah.
couldn't listen to anything and, like, tell you what I just heard, like, just information, and I couldn't pull old information out, which is hard when you're an academic, then your mind's like, "What?" But being that way and then going into this being bedridden, what are some of the things that you did to help you cope that may help someone out there that's listening, that was personal to you and as personal as you wanna share, but, you know, all kinda need to figure out coping strategies when you can't leave your bed, right? So, if there's
Right,
anything
right.
you could wanna say to that.
I think I sort of just said it. I really was very, very alone in my chair. And that one friend who called every 3 days and just, had a conversation, like you were asking about organizations that helped. It
Mhm.
was that one person, and that one person for me is probably the same as I am for my friend who's very, very sick.
And were your conversations just more just light and fun, or they
Yeah,
varied, or was
yeah,
it
they were
just a
just
check-in?
everyday conversations, the conversations that we take for granted, you know? Who's doing what? Who's interested in what? What's going wrong? What's going right? I can't remember the details, but I think there was a time, I know there was a time in there, and I know my friend's experiencing this too, where it just seemed like I was so sick, and I would have this realization that there were other people who were getting up and going to the grocery store and, like, going to work and driving their car. And it's like, it was almost unfathomable to me at my sickest that the world was going on without me and everybody else could get up and go to work and drive their car and go to the grocery store and come back home and make dinner. And so just that little thread of connection with that one person, it didn't take a whole organization. It didn't take a Lyme organization to do it. Just that one person and that conversation. And I just really think conversation is medicinal. Another thing that's oddly medicinal that we're gifted in these days is Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and HBO, that we are so gifted with a wealth of movies and material and things to watch that we didn't have 15 or 20 years ago. And I think distraction is medicinal. I think distraction, if you are well enough to be distracted, that's a good thing. Like my friend listening to the stories, she wasn't well enough to be distracted. She was very sick, but the listening in that instance for her, it doesn't work if it's a book on tape. It didn't work for me. I was too sick to follow. You might have been too. But to have a live person there, to have a live person engaging with you in that way, I think was really, really important. So,
Yeah, like, I always have believed that, this plane and depending on what you believe, like, philosophically or religiously, like, this plane is really relational. Like, it's about relationships that we're here, so we could try to be apart or too much, but having the relationship with someone, like the one person, really is transformative. It really does help you on all sorts of levels, and at this level too, when you're really sick, I mean, that's just very inspiring that just one conversation every 3 days or going up once a week to visit, and then through the storytelling as well, something that,
mm,
and the Netflix, there is something about watching something and you can feel inspired, you can have some even listening and reading, that's all about listening to someone else's world to get out of yourself for a little bit, but you also feel like things hit you, like, that could be also personal, could tell your story. Maybe it's in a different characterization. You could speak to better than this than I can, but that, like, reading stories that are captivating and that, like, books can make you cry and you can feel things and kinda live through them in a way that's not, I think, a negative. You can just like, oh, life is still happening. I still this life force in me. I could see that through the pages or hearing my friend read to me and
yeah.
having that personal connection is really key. And I really do love that it's just like one person. You don't need 20 or this whole thing. You just need a little bit of that, just a little bit, whatever your kind of medicine is.
I think the other thing that maybe applies to almost everybody is that when you get sick and when you get sick with these kinds of diseases, long COVID, Lyme, chronic fatigue, and your body is just sending these multiple signals all the time. I felt like I had little lights going off all the time, like, pay attention, headache, pay attention, burning feet, pay attention, you're not sleeping, pay attention. But then when it's a mystery and you don't know how to fix it, your brain starts looping and your brain starts making these lists of what's wrong, right? And it's almost like your mind is afraid of letting go of what's wrong because if you take your consciousness off of it, then you're not going to get better. So you have to say, oh, my head hurts. Oh, my muscles are aching. Oh, I can't think. Oh, I'm not sleeping well. Oh, my feet are burning, whatever it is, right? All of the distraction is medicinal because it stops that brain looping. And I
Mhm.
think that's important. I think it's a mercy, but I think it's medicinally important that that type of distraction is a good thing. And I just remembered something else that was really helpful that wasn't Dr. Horowitz and wasn't antibiotics and wasn't medicine, was binaural beats, which you that's must have come up with people that you're talking about. I would get exhausted and sick, and I would put on my headphones and I would listen to binaural beats and I would clear my brain. Again, stopping the looping, the worry, that kind of constant worry about being sick, and that made a difference. That made a difference. I probably did that twice a day, and that ties in with other things like, meditation or things like that. It is a kind of meditation, but
But I think when you're that I know for me, when I was so sick, I couldn't concentrate on meditating. Like, it was too there's a lot of things that took energy and my
Mhm.
concentration of not concentrating, like, I couldn't do it. So, the binaural beats did help too because it kind of puts you in that state without having to you're not active, but you're not, like, doing this whole thing like you're really conscious of it. Like, I don't know, hard to explain, but
To
I'm not explaining it well, but it's like by doing that, you kinda it's supportive in that way that you could just receive it
Yeah.
and have
Yeah,
that loop.
like, when you're meditating, your mind is running, and the idea is to stop your mind from running, right? But that's hard to do. So if you don't have the energy to kind of counter that, whereas the binaural beats and headphones, if you can just let your mind rest on these tones, just, like, let the mind rest, and I just, like, no more words, and just rest the mind on the tones. That was really helpful. That was I had forgotten about them, but they saw me through a lot. So,
Yeah,
um
and, all of these diseases, they affect our central nervous system. They affect so many different things that our body does that we don't really know what it does until it stops kinda working and how all the parts intersect with each other. So, frequency, music, all of those things really kinda help support our nervous system in a way to help kind of when things go offline, our body is really just trying to survive, right? So then we develop all these other symptoms because our body is like, "Okay, I don't have time for you. So I need to breathe, and I need to digest some food maybe." And that's iffy, but really your heart needs to br your heart needs to beat, but having this other support to kinda support your central nervous system, doing stuff like having the connection with someone and also music or the binaural beats are very powerful, and it's something that, when your mind doesn't work kinda hard. I mean, people that are listening, I'm sure they understand, but it is hard to tell people, like, that don't have that experience, like, it's like, sometimes it's hard for me to take a shower and cook in the same day, or it's hard just to, like, sit up, so when you're trying to sit people are like, "What? You can't listen to something?" Like, "Yeah, no, I can't. It takes
no.
too much. I'm too dysregulated, and that just is not helping. So I need to find something that kind of goes beyond that. So my mind, it helps my mind without thinking. So it is really, I think, important. Chronic illness, I think, and Lyme disease, all of these things, they're just so odd to try to explain to someone. But once you, unfortunately, meet people that have had it, they get like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I've had that too. But
Mhm.
other people, not so much. So do you find when you're now are you promoting your poetry and your books actively? Are you having readings that are inspired by your friends reading? Like in a more like are you going to bookstores? Are you doing readings on them or
All of the above, all of the
okay.
above. Yeah, so right now it's the poetry book, and I'm honoring my poet self, and then I'm gonna shift into the novels, which I'm really, really excited about. I finally got a publisher because I believe in they're good. They're really, really good stories, so I'm really excited they're going out in the world. The poetry has a lot of animals in it and a lot of critters and a lot of, the ecosphere, you heard where I live. Everybody
Mhm.
lives here. Vultures live here, and crows live here, and little scarlet mites and snails, and they're all, like, in my poems. And then the 2 novels, I'm drifting far away because I wanted to read you a poem about
Oh,
exactly what we were talking about, but should I
okay,
stop
then go
myself?
ahead and do that. Yeah, no,
Okay, yeah, let me
please
not get
share.
too far away. So I have one poem about that loneliness and
Mm,
one poem about diagnosis. So I'll just read the one poem and you can see where you want to go with this. But this was before I met my friend who's so very, very sick. But I imagined, as you might have imagined, when you're that sick, there was a point at which I thought, I'm sitting here in this chair and I can't listen to a book on tape and I can't make an email and I can't get up. And as you said, I got dressed this morning and took a shower, and that was it for the day. I'm just here in the chair and I can't do anything. And I started thinking about you, Donna. I started
mhm,
thinking about somebody else in a chair or their bed, somewhere else in the same condition. And I started to imagine us all kind of alone in our rooms. So
mm,
this poem is Letter from a Long Illness. If you have been to this land as I have been, where I am now, you will know the chill fog. Know that the fig tree, so far from light, will not fruit. Maybe you are here even as I write. Maybe you haven't escaped. We can't see each other, alone in different sick rooms of the same country, borders closed, pinned, motionless. We did not meet at the atrium. You didn't complain your jeans were tight and choose the Reuben. I didn't use a matchbook to steady a table leg. We don't do simple things here, where minutes are broken and we can't make plans. Though you can't see or hear me, I'm writing on the faith that saying it keeps possibility alive, that it might not be too late for either of us to hike the prairie and collect sand spurs on our socks, to drive ourselves into thunderstorms, not too late to stroll down Madison Avenue admiring shirts displayed on seas of opalescent buttons. We might yet pass each other on the boardwalk, you in your tight jeans, shopping artisan stalls, your little dog in a basket on your handlebars, waiting for the borders to open on the faith that thinking it keeps possibility alive. I am hoping to meet you there.
mm. How beautiful.
So that's
Like,
to all the people who are listening in their laptops to your podcast and feeling alone. You're not alone. Yeah. So
very touching. Mm. And just
mm,
taking a like, yeah, that needs a nice little space around it for people to kind of feel it and all of the things you wanna be doing with your friends or through that poem.
you could put it on the
Yeah,
notes underneath your podcast if you wanted. We can
I
share it.
would love to.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so I just wanna honor that the sensitivity about it and just the connection that you had all the way in your room going through that is like feeling that connectedness with all the other women in the world or men that are going through that.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Mm.
Is that one is this one in the book or no? Is this just
Yes.
okay.
This one's in the
Okay.
current book. Yeah.
All
So
right, great. Okay. I just wanna make sure it made it in somewhere, so
it
'cause
did.
that's
It did. It did.
very it's very powerful, especially with chronic illness, and I would like to hear your other one if you feel up to, about diagnosis, I think
Okay.
that would be a
Although
nice
probably the letter to everybody really hits the nail on the head. But
Yeah,
so,
no, but I really think that, like, that's the personal, like, universal connection with
mhm.
it, but then, it's so inspiring, I wanna hear another one. I'm like your friend that you read the stories to, no wonder she was like, "Read me another one, read me another one."
Thank you. So this one was when I was on the path that everybody who's listening has been on, where you go to doctor after doctor after doctor because things aren't getting better and there's so many things going wrong, and yeah, you're just looking for the person who can help. And at some point in there, I went to see an acupuncturist who had studied in China, and this was the poem I wrote about that experience. It's called Medicine. In mystery, I've come at last to the Chinese doctor. Diagnosis: demonic possession. Spirochetes unbound by tissue, blood, or bone. His cure: release the dragons. Iridescent, white to fight the unnamed, salmon-colored to attack the known. I imagine them with folded wings, small enough to swim in human cells, sent after demons, equally ancient, equally small, who show themselves in cytoplasm the way creatures in opaque ponds create concentric rings unseen, break the skin of the water, then return to hide in the mud. The war proceeds between the winged and wingless. And as in all histories, the winner will write it. The winner will be deemed good. Though every demon, electric, toxic, feels it is a child of the universe. Yet, isn't there something always wrong about invasion? Something always noble about defense? So, in the end, I stand on a lacquered bridge over swollen runoff, a churning pond behind. It's April, ice on all the edges. The air hurts wonderfully to breathe. The water foams white. The sky, late and high, is riddled with salmon-colored contrails. The last dragons leaving.
That does sum up. I feel like when you have these diseases that you do feel like you're possessed, demon. Is that what did he say those words to you?
He did. He did. He said those words, which sparked the poem and the imagination, but
Yeah.
he said, when I was telling him all the symptoms, like, because there's just so many symptoms. And the thing about Lyme disease, you can't blame the doctors who don't want to hear it because each person comes in with a slightly different set. Like, if you get a cold with a rhinovirus, first it starts in your throat, you get a sore throat, then your nose starts running, then you sneeze and sneeze and sneeze and feel terrible. Then you have a cough, and then you get better. And every single person has the exact same thing. When you have long COVID or you have Lyme, everybody's slightly different. You can't compare you to the next person because they're having a different trip, you know? So,
Mhm.
when I was there telling him all of that, he said, "Yeah," he said, "I know what's wrong. You have a demonic possession." He said that. And I said, "Well, what are you gonna do about it?" And he said, "I'm gonna release the dragons." He said that. So
That's awesome. And then did that kind of shift anything for you? I mean, I would just love to get that diagnosis. It's very validating.
it is.
You
That
know what
was
I mean?
good. That
And
was the good
fun.
part. I went to him for this is again, we've all been there. I went to him for
Yeah.
a year and a half. He ostensibly knew what he was doing. I spent a lot of money. It felt really, really good to, have somebody to lie on his table stuck full of needles and relax for an hour, but no, it didn't do anything. It didn't take and when I got to Dr. Horowitz and he was oh my god, he was like Eisenhower on D-Day. It was like the troops coming, and he was just so overwhelming in his treatment, but it took that degree of overwhelming, relentless, overwhelming treatment to get better. So,
Yeah. And I think part of it too, I think there's like some weird breadcrumbs we all have to kind of figure out, right? Going to one doctor leads you to another doctor, leads you to, Chinese doctor leads you to this. Like they all kind of help initially, but they didn't have that relentless onslaught that you said. Like sometimes your illnesses needs like the full force of something more, something even bigger. So that's
yeah.
really but what a great poem that is too, because it's very validating, because that is that it feels something's foreign in your body and you just don't know. Like definitely not you. Like, what you're able to do and what you're able to do now, you feel different. You
Mhm.
see different, and sometimes you don't know how you got there, how you're gonna get out of there. So I love both of those are both truths to having, and I'm sure there's many more in your book. Now, is this something that is published where you can only get it at certain bookstores? Can you get it through your website? Do they sell it? Are they gonna sell it on websites, or is it just how do we
No,
get
all
your
of the
book?
above.
Okay.
The poetry book, which I have to say, doesn't dwell a lot in about illness in the body. It is more about the ecosphere and the planet and the animals, and it's transcendental. It goes from the smallest atoms in our thumb to thinking about the cosmos. The book is published by Blue Light Press in San Francisco. It's a Blue Light Book Award finalist. It's available on Amazon. It's available on my website. It's available in bookstores around here. So,
Okay.
yeah, so it's definitely out there. It's been getting some great reviews, and those reviews and some interviews like this, but more about poetry, are also available on my website.
Okay. And
And
you go under DM Gordon, and that's
mhm.
how we can look you up as the author. What's the name of the poetry book?
Loosestrife for Porcupines.
Oh, and what is Loosestrife? Should I know that word when I
Loosestrife
do it?
is something you would know if you lived in New England, but not here.
Oh,
Loosestrife is a beautiful purple flower. It fills up all the
mm,
hay fields. It's very gorgeous. It's also invasive. So that comes from a moment in the book where I was talking about all the critters and how they kind of interlock and interweave out in the field. And there's Timothy for deer, and there's mice for the hawks, and there's loosestrife for porcupine.
okay.
Although I've learned that after the book came out and after the title and after the everything and after the award, I've learned that porcupines don't eat the invasive kind. They there is another kind of loosestrife that they do eat,
Oh, okay. Well,
but anyway, loosestrife for porcupine.
Porcupines. It's a great name. And then that's out currently. That's what you are doing some readings. And then in 2027, what's the name of the book that's going to come out then?
Yeah, I don't know if it will keep its working title,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's called Gabriel, and
Okay.
it's with Sibylline Press. It's a California press, and it's about a young boy about 10 years old who's separated from his family and kind of bumbling around various communities in northern British Columbia in the islands. So he goes from island community to island community to island community, really looking to find himself and his family. And then there's a prequel that will come out after that that's about his grandmother who's a sex worker in Seattle during World War II, and she's fatally attracted to a man who's not good for her, and she meets a nuclear chemist who's having his own type of meltdown from the war, and their friendship, it's about them, so
Wow, they all sound very interesting, so very diverse. So we'll follow you on Goodreads, right? I'm sure you
okay.
have like DM Gordon, follow her on Amazon or wherever you get your books. And then I'll leave the poems down underneath the in the transcripts and also links to Diana's website of where you can find her. Because on your website, I think you're also doing some live events throughout the year, right? So then
Am,
those are
and I'm
listed.
also this is what's next, I'm sort of excited about it, can I say a little
Yeah,
now?
please.
I am starting a Substack in the next, like, week or 2. It's called Leaf Sheep, and it is poems on Substack, and it's the poems I read to you are a little longer and more intense, but I have a lot of poems about animals. They're not cute. They're substantive, but they're accessible. And I think a lot of people have, poetry New Yorker poems have put a lot of people off of poetry, and bad poetry has put a lot of people off of poetry. So this website is looking have to try to expand the audience and introduce people to poems with animals that they love, and just a little poem in your inbox. Not too many words. We're all bombarded with words these days, but a poem about, I don't know, a hummingbird or a capybara or a grumpy oyster or, just a little something in your inbox every week or two. So,
And then, is this your Substack or is it like a subcategory in Substack where they can find you? Or if they go to your website, is there a way to sign up for your Substack?
Yes, please go to my website.
Okay.
There's little leaf sheep on the bottom
Okay.
of each page, and you can click on that. It is my website.
Okay. Oh,
So
great. Awesome. Well, that's wonderful. That's a nice treat in your inbox that's not like marketing or an email or whatever.
no, it's just a little moment. It's like no longer than a minute or two, just a moment to kind of slow down and enter a small world, a small, different world than you're in, and then go on. So,
That'd
um,
be perfect also for anyone out there that's having their bedridden moment listening to this, to click on Diana's Substack, get that in your email and either read it or have someone read it to you just to kind of have that momentary break of like the looping. I'm just thinking of like, you were able to share your work with your friend and now with me and my audience. And then this nice little Substack email of just a nice, quick little poem that is about nature, that's something we're all connected to, but having a different little, like, reframe moment if, you need to break that loop and just get a nice
tiny,
little.
tiny.
Yeah, like a tiny those tiny moments, right? That really is, like, through our journeys, it was kinda your story is like there's these moments that didn't take too long, but they were significant, and that's really kind of how you really heal chronic illness, is like you find a practitioner that gets you and you get through your journey, however that works. It seems like it's more than 2 doctors, probably more like 15 or 20, maybe more. And then you need to find these little moments to slow down and to start heal yourself very slowly. It's the long game. It's a very slow process, unfortunately, but by doing that and finding these pleasures in that, then you really start your healing. I know that's from my journey, and it sounds like and yours too, and I'm sure there's many other women I know from women I talk to that is also a common theme, is they're doing smaller things slower, and that is medicine within itself. So, I love that you get a poem from Diana through
And
Substack.
I think
That really is meaningful.
I hope so. I hope so. And the other thing is, maybe for people who are listening, is this is the afterwards. This is the afterwards. I was sick for a decade. I lost a decade of my life, but there was an afterwards. And there was times, and I'm sure people listening are feeling it, where you don't know if you're ever going to get out of this. You just don't know. But keep on. There was a sign in my doctor's office that said, never, ever, ever, ever say never.
Mm,
Just keep on. And this really is the fruit. My life at the moment is the fruit of everything that's come before. So keep the faith and keep trying. Find a
yeah,
friend who call you every few days, because that helps. Listen to binaural beats, and yeah.
yeah. Read your poem, have someone read you, Diana's books, because it is I mean, yeah, when you're in the darkest part, and it goes up and down. I have to say my stories, I feel better, but, there's also a lot of times where I go back into how I was feeling, and then those moments I'm like, "Oh, no, is it gonna start all over again? How long is this
Mm,
gonna last?" So those are real moments too where you do need to kind of find the little things that will get you through to remember to, you know and if you're still in the process of advocating for yourself and finding your right doctor, I know it took me probably 2 decades and random connections of doctors to get my diagnosis, actually 4 decades to get my diagnosis, so,
wow.
you know don't give up. It is really we're all playing the very, very long game in this, and Diana is living proof, and you can get better, you do get better. It's just not like, we're taught, like, "Go to the doctor." He'll diagnose you, and then he'll give you some things, and you'll get better. It's not like that with chronic illness. It's
Mm-mm.
a whole other journey. So, hopefully all of us are really finding out our deep, like, creativity or doing something that we're inspired. Like, you brought up Frankel, right?
Viktor
Earlier.
Frankl, Man's Search
Yeah.
for Meaning. Yeah.
Yes. Search for meaning. Man's search for meaning. Is that right? Okay.
I can't remember. We talked a little bit before we
Yeah.
started, so I don't remember
Yeah,
if
I
what
think
part of the
we
body
said
it
it
is.
in here, but,
Okay.
like, that's true. It's like you go through these really horrific things sometimes, and it's perspective, but then also you kind of find some of these nuggets in life, and it's not positive toxicity or whatever. It's not that. This is not Pollyanna. It's not like, "Oh, we're like, oh, like, read some poetry, you'll be better." No, this is like your life is part of this. You're really sick, you have to figure it out, and these are just some of the things that will help. And then in this journey, my hope is for me too is I really start to help someone else, right? One person with this podcast, or like you with your stories, you helped your friend immensely, and that was probably filled your heart enough since you weren't going to publish anyway. You're like, ugh, you know, at least I'm helping her. And then now look, it changed into something bigger so you can help more people. But really, if it helps one person, then I'm satisfied because that's what I needed on my journey that I didn't really have. And then I found through different things. So I'm very grateful that you spent time with me today and shared your story. And I'm looking forward to getting your poetry. I have to say, I'm not like, I like poetry. I don't always get it, but the poetry that you spoke in this, I'm like, oh, I have to go buy your book. I really want to read all these woodland creatures and see that, because it doesn't have to speak to chronic illness. It just has to speak to my soul, right? Isn't that poetry?
It's true. And also, the thing about poetry, there's a big secret. You don't have to get it. You're not in
Okay.
6th grade anymore. You can't do it wrong. And, if you like a line, but but the rest doesn't sit with you, you go on to the next one. So there's no it to get.
Okay, good. I think I was educated into, like, poetry is I don't know, however my schooling was that there had to be some, like, what are the hidden meanings in poetry? And I was like, I don't know. So
Well, you're not alone. Most people feel that way. So,
so I really think that it's just such a beautiful prose, and it has such a nice the energy of feeling and the conviction behind the words was what was moving and beautiful.
thank you.
So,
Thank you.
and I think that it probably is the essence of poetry, right? That moving something inside of you that stirs that maybe would never normally in that specific tone. So
Mhm.
I'm very excited to read your poetry. And again, I'll leave all the links. Do you want to just shout out your website or where people can connect with you
Yeah,
so they
we'll
have
have
it?
the link. I'll send you the link
Yeah.
afterwards, maybe email me,
Yeah.
but it's just dmgordon.com.
Okay, perfect.
Really easy.
dmdora.com. And it'll be underneath this and both the video and the audio. And remember to click the little leaf in the corner, right? For the Substack.
Leaf
Is
sheep.
that
Leaf sheep is a
leaf
little
sheet?
teeny ocean critter. It's about this big, but it says leaf sheep on it. You can't
It
miss
says
it.
Lucian.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that as well in my inbox. So,
Okay.
again, thank you so much for spending time with me today. Thank you for sharing your story and all your creativity. And thank you for everyone for listening. And I think these are perfect words that Diana said is like, or from her doctor or however it's by, just really never give up. Like have your moments of like pause and like say, hey, forget it, whatever. But then have that just be a moment. Continue back into your journey to find healing however you can. And speak with you guys next time. Bye. Thanks for listening to Dear Body, I'm Listening. If this episode helped you feel a little more seen, a little more steady, or a little less alone in what your body has been carrying, share it with someone who might need that too. And remember, there's nothing wrong with you. You've just been living in a body that hasn't been understood. Until next time, keep listening gently.